Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I welcome my good friend Jeff to the show, where we're going to be talking about the mind, body, and improving your self-confidence and many, many more things. So just a quick introduction to Jeff. So Jeff is the visionary and mentor for Athletes Afterlife, a company that focuses on helping former athletes thrive in life after sports, aligning their mind, body, and soul for optimal health to level up themselves, their relationship, and their career. So welcome to the show today, Jeff. I'm glad we could finally make it happen. Tell the listener, be really useful to hear, first of all, tell the listener, what got you into this area, helping athletes and helping people in general with this whole mind and body area.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I'm glad that we could finally connect this way. I know you and I have been friends for a little while now, so grateful to be on the show. But absolutely, it's what got me into it really was after doing some leadership coaching for about 18 months. It really wasn't super aligning with me, my values. As much as I love leadership, I've been in leadership most of my life. I just wasn't really feeling impassioned by coaching people in that realm. So I was about to give up on coaching. And as you and I have discussed before, the power of breath work. And it was through a breath work session that I had late August of 2022 that I saw myself speaking to former athletes, and I saw myself working with them through just different things and just life after sports. And it was extremely empowering for me. So I've started navigating those waters September last year and kind of seeing what it looked like, and officially started to launch my podcast and also the coaching and just the group work around that back in November of last year. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. And it's been super inspiring. Definitely something that's needed within the former athlete industry. And it's just not something that's been talked about enough. It's growing in popularity, but they're kind of forgotten about. And it's one of the things why I'm so impassioned by the situation and by helping others in that realm.
Awesome. Love it. So yeah, a couple of things I really wanted to pick up on there. So with the former athletes, what is maybe there's obviously individual differences always and many different challenges we're all going through. Are there any kind of common themes you see in this area of work of particular challenges that go on?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, I would say, first and foremost, is the identity, the identity that they have and sense of purpose outside of sports. What I've realized, and a lot of that is tied down to, situations that they dealt with as children getting into the sport to begin with. There's so much that we have in our life that's tied to our past that we don't even realize why we're responding the way we're responding. And once they leave sport, for people that are in military that might be listening, it's a very similar situation. Once they leave, there's this sense of loss. There's this identity that they've associated with themselves their whole life since they were a child of playing the sport or being a part of something of that high intensity. And then they go into the quote unquote real world and they literally have no idea really how to navigate. And they go out seeking for things that give them that sense of urgency, that sense of just total immersiveness that is fast paced. And sometimes those end up resulting in things where it's unhealthy situations, like it's drugs, it's alcohol, maybe it's racing vehicles at a super high rate or getting on a motorcycle and doing things, not saying that those are necessarily unhealthy for racing cars, but doing things where they're seeking that adrenaline. And if they don't have that, they go into a state of depression, or they just start seeking things in different ways, and also having that impact not only themselves, but also their personal lives with family, friends, work, et cetera.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I feel like obviously not being in that bracket of a former athlete, but I can relate to the situation of perhaps challenged by identity. What is it I want to do? I've spoken to many people who are a little bit stuck in that area. And then by default, we can get onto the, you mentioned like the alcohol, the drugs, those kind of things, and the easy things to do, which are usually some of the worst things for us.
Absolutely.
How can we, like, from people you've worked with, or maybe from your own experience or others you've known, like, is there something we can do to start like building a bit of an identity or get a bit more clarity on a kind of direction on where we want to go? Because I know this is a huge challenge for many people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because it's interesting you bring this up, because a lot of people have asked me, they're like, well, I've worked as a school teacher for 30 years and I just retired, and I'm kind of feeling a sense of loss. Everybody goes through it. Anytime you've devoted so much time and effort into a specific practice, a field of expertise, and then you walk away from that, there is a sense of identity loss for almost anybody. And the biggest thing people can start doing is going through and just doing self-love, self-guided practices of tapping into things that help them compartmentalize their thoughts. Because you start going into overthinking, and as we know in this personal development world, that we start going into depression, which is focusing too much on the past, and we start going into anxiety, which is focusing too much on the future of where am I going to go, what am I going to do, and we forget about being present. So doing things like journaling, I always tell people, because we talk about meditation a lot and breath work, people say, I can't quiet my mind. Well, journal first, brain dump everything out onto the paper that you can do, and then go into meditation. And if you can't quiet your mind by yourself, there's so many apps nowadays. There's things on Spotify, on, plenty of apps that have the ability to have you have a guided meditation that you can do for 5-10 minutes just to get started. And with those things, you'll start understanding pieces of yourself a little bit more, and understanding parts of who you are and where you can actually start tapping into what it is that made you successful previously to how you can be successful moving forward. And of course, at the end of the day, getting a coach, a mentor, a therapist, anybody that can help guide you through, an unbiased third party is the way I always put it, because we go to our friends and family and they all already have a preconceived bias on who they see us as and what they already know us as. So get somebody that doesn't know you, someone who doesn't have any skin in the game, but is just there to try to help guide you into the next direction.
I love what you said about, I definitely agree with the guidance and getting some kind of support. And there's some very skilled, obviously, coaches out there are able to do that. I found like I've invested loads in them, and that's definitely benefit in my life, and as I'm sure it has for yourself. I also like what you really talked about in terms of brain dumping from journaling. That's a good reminder to me, actually, before doing some of those meditations and practices. So admittedly, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge for me, like to kind of meditate when you've got a bit more going on, sometimes in your business, in your life, in your personal, professional life as well. So really like that one. So like you mentioned, for you, like you got this revelation of what you wanted to do, a little bit more like what you want to do, help these athletes in breath work. So because we don't actually touch on it this much, I covered it on the podcast, and I do it myself. Yeah, could you share a little bit more about maybe some of the benefits you've experienced from breath work?
Yeah, I mean, aside from when I first dove into breath work years ago, it was more just around box breathing. I know we've kind of talked a little bit about that, but box breathing, where you do a 4-second inhale through the nose, hold it for 4 seconds, release for 4 seconds, and then hold it at the bottom for 4 seconds. And in that process, it's such a soothing and calming experience. It allows you to get back to being present, allows you to calm your mind, because you're only focusing on the one thing, which is your breath. And our breath, we do so when we breathe. Most human beings breathe in a unconscious state. It's just something that we do. We know it keeps us alive. We know that it is there to, keep us and give us oxygen and keep things going and keep us moving. However, we don't ever really consciously breathe anymore. And that's why breath work for me has been so powerful, is it's not only does it allow me to get back into a calm, more present state and get back to a more clarity focus. The biggest thing that I've uncovered when I first started getting into more of these longer, in-depth breathwork sessions that are 45, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, things like that, is that I started unpacking with very clear intention part of my traumatic past, part of the things that have been limiting beliefs for me, things that were holding me back from being my best self, and not realizing at first why these things were coming up. And I had my first breath work session, I say jokingly yet unjokingly, through the only panic attack I've ever had in my life. And I realized in that because I had this vision of my father leaving when I was 5.
Oh, wow.
And I remembered that, and I was like, wow. And that's when I knew at that moment something was surrounding the idea of abandonment. And that's when I started diving deeper into breath work, because I started to see something was there. And through that process of intentional looking for new ways and untapping those sides of me that I didn't know were still resonant inside my body, I started finding other groups, doing more breathwork sessions, and I've uncovered so many different things: money mindset blocks. I've uncovered issues around relationships, around confidence, around so many different pieces of my life, my relationships, not just with women, but with men, as far as being able to trust men, because when my dad left, it left this lasting residue basically on me that I wasn't able to break until I started going into breath work. So extremely powerful. But the biggest thing is going in, letting go of any expectation of what's going to come, but having a very clear intention. And then when you're being guided through it, go all in, don't hold back, like breathe as heavy as you can through that process of how they're telling you, visualize the things that they're actually telling you to visualize, and go in. Because I know too many people that go into breathwork sessions and come out of it and say, I didn't see anything. I didn't have any experiences. And a lot of times I feel there's pressure and judgment that comes up for people when you're doing it with a group of other people. And if you can just allow yourself to let go of your ego and allow yourself of that judgment, be free of the judgment, you'll be able to go in and go deep into that breath work. And usually things start to come up.
Mm. Yeah, I remember when I started personally with breath work, it was a bit more, I was kind of just going, I wasn't like not putting any effort in, of course, but it was, maybe I underestimated how deep. And I was like, well, that was quite relaxing, but perhaps not the release. And other times I've like screamed out of it. It's like, wow, powerful stuff. And I tried a couple of different variations of people as well. But yeah, I guess like for me, it kind of gets into parts of the body that just like that I didn't even know were there, and it brings up memories. What I found, and some good guidance on that one.
Absolutely, yeah, because that's where we store a lot of our trauma, or most of our trauma is in parts of our body, and it helps to release some of those things because we don't even realize that's where they're being stored. And a lot of people have chronic illnesses, or chronic back pain, or chronic knee pain, stomach pain, gut issues. There's a lot of things that we store in different parts of our body from past experiences that we don't even realize are being stored because of that.
Yeah, it's very true. And it's crazy what comes up, and some of the memories sometimes I hear people share at the end. It's like, oh, wow, I experienced this, and this. And yeah, it kind of gives a different release, that whole like somatic experience I found on it. So kind of like switching topics. I mean, actually, before we switch topics, like it'd be interesting to hear like how often you kind of get into your breathwork practice.
Guided stuff, I usually, at one point I was doing about once a month, but now I basically go and do probably once every couple of months. I'll do something guided. For me in particular, I'll do some sort of breathing exercise or some sort of breathing technique, usually probably 3 times a week. I don't do it as much as I probably should, but usually the box breathing, I'll do that consistently throughout the day, especially if it's been a stressful day. It allows me to kind of get back to center. But I'll usually do that, once or twice. I a lot of times focus in on that kind of stuff when I'm doing meditation. If I'm meditating, I'll focus solely on my breathing and just kind of being very intentional with just that kind of a focus, and allows me to kind of clear my head for the rest of the day. But in any kind of construct, it's usually some sort of breathing and conscious breathing at least once a day.
Okay. No, that's really interesting to hear. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. And yeah. Kind of switching topics a little bit as I was going back to sort of like confidence. Obviously, that's what we focus a lot on this podcast, and actually quite a lot of those breath work I wanted to bring up because it releases quite a lot of limitations or maybe negative stores that's kind of impacting. This is personally for me, impacting on me. Like, you can find stuff you didn't realize was there. But yeah, kind of touching a little bit on confidence. Like, where do you think, for you, where's the lack of confidence come from or rooted from the people you've worked with or from your own experience?
The lack of confidence, usually from what I've found, is all stemming again back from something that they've experienced at a younger age. Usually something that's been unfortunately imparted on them from usually a parental figure, or maybe somebody they looked up to in some way, shape, or form as a parental figure, or it could have been a direct peer that said something to them, but there was no one there to basically disengage that thought process through their mind, where that started to become something that they questioned at a young age. And then eventually it fed into who they became because other things started to reaffirm that belief system in their head. And that starts to just kind of build over the course of time as you form new neural pathways and paradigms based off of that belief system. And going back, because I mean, there's so many people who have been successful athletes, successful business people, entrepreneurs, people successful in the military, and they have so much success, but a lot of that success is fueled out of the fact that they feel that they're not good enough, that their confidence is always, and even though they're successful, they're confident in their ability to perform, there's still some element of their life that keeps saying it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. And they keep pressing and pressing and pressing because nothing is ever good enough, because they don't feel worthy of just being able to sit in the stillness and be able to absorb what it is that's actually going on around them and being present. They're always looking forward instead of saying, I'm going to enjoy this. I am confident in who I am. I don't need to impress anyone. I'm doing this solely for who I am and for my own growth and my own personal development.
Yeah. No, I like that. I can definitely relate to my own experience as well in that. And what are some of the ways that someone perhaps with that realization can start building it back up a little bit? I mean, there's many ways, but is there any you found particularly useful?
As far as for building your confidence back up, I mean, for me, what I've been able to do from my own personal experience and what I'm starting to work with people on is figuring out where it stems from first and foremost. Is okay, why, going through, and I know you've heard of this, a lot of times I'll walk through people through the 7 layers of why, and driving them back down to a very specific point in time where they see a portion of themselves and say, wow, I didn't realize how much that impacted me. Once they can see where it's at, you can start to separate yourself that moment in time and where the confidence was lacking, and start realizing that was a part of me, but that's not who I am today. And now I can start stepping into a more empowering state. And a lot of it is just taking action. Taking action and being okay with failing, and understanding that failure is just the next step to success, because I think there's such a demonized view of failing, and people talk about failing and how bad it is, and just being okay with it and saying, hey, you know what, it's a part of the learning process. And if I don't look at it so much as failing and that I'm learning, and as long as I don't stop and I just keep going and I keep tweaking little things here and there along the way, eventually I'm going to start succeeding. And in that success, the confidence starts to build. And in that, just processing and realizing every day through affirmations and just looking at yourself, speaking to yourself in the mirror and saying, I am confident, I am good enough, I am worthy. Saying things like that to yourself that really help build and reaffirm who you are, and recognizing that you are your past, but your past was sent to teach you, to keep you moving forward and help you be stronger instead of holding you back.
some great guidance there. Love it, especially the mirror one. I've been doing a lot of with my coach recently as well, with the exercise we're going through. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Jeff, and thank you for like everything you've shared with us today. Really appreciate it. We could obviously go a lot more into depth, but really appreciate obviously talking about the mind as well as the body, and releasing some of that through breath work and all these various techniques that you've discovered in your area of work. So before we close off today, is there any final point or points that you'd like to share? And also, where can the listener find you if they want to find out a little bit more about some of the work you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as points, the biggest thing is always look at and start trying to find joy in the journey. I mean, the word joy is literally in the word journey, and just start trying to find happiness and joy within the actual process. Hype up your hyphen is what I tell people all the time. It's not about the beginning. It's not about the end. It's what you do in that hyphen that really makes the world go around and makes your world that much better. And the more we can start to enjoy that moment and really start leaning into that, life is going to be so much better. As far as finding me, and people can find me on my podcast at Athletes Afterlife. Instagram is athletes.afterlife. I've got my website, of course, same thing, athletesafterlife.com. And I've got a Facebook group. It's a free group right now for people that want to join on, former athletes. It's just called United Athletes. It's all designed about connecting and networking with other former athletes, like-minded mindsets, and moving people forward in that direction. Great community that we're forming there, and that's on Facebook. You can easily find it in the search. And currently right now, I'm actually building a challenge of sorts. You and I have both done the 75 hard, but mine's it's a 28-day thing that's only for self-mastery. And I don't believe that anybody has ever truly completely mastered anything, but it's about enjoying the process, again, finding joy and finding that constant pursuit of being the best version of yourself. And it's about finding and putting together the framework and tactics to really help that out. And that's going to be launching on July 17th. And people can touch base with me on Instagram on that as well, to kind of touch base about what that's all about.
Awesome, Jeff. Love it. So once again, a massive thank you. We'll be sure to link all that up below. So a massive thank you once again for coming on today.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it, man. It's been great to be on here, and I love the podcast, and hope this message reaches quite a few people. That'd be awesome.
Of course. Right. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember, you are in control of your own self-esteem and confidence.